Hi guys, welcome to our book club. Today will be the first session of our express level. This time our book's name is The Girl Who Reads on the Metro, a book written by Christine Féret-Fleury. She is French and so far the story is happening in Paris. And this video will cover from chapter number 1 to chapter number 5. So let's just start. Welcome back guys. As I was telling you in the introduction of this video, today we start a new book and this is the cover. I am already sharing my screen so you have it right there. And this book was originally written in French, so we are reading the translation. And we have as the background, all this Paris scenery. We have, the museum, we have the Arc of the Triomphe, we have the Eiffel Tower, and then we have a girl who is reading a book. So this is the title. The name of the author is Christine Féret-Fleury. She is French, and let's just begin with our reading. So here you have, this beautiful first page with the publishing house, the title, the translation. It said translated from the French by Ross Schwartz. So this is the name of the translator. And then we have here more about the author, more about, the copywriting. And we have here a phrase, a beautiful phrase, because it says, I have always imagined that paradise will be a kind of library. And it says Jose Luis Borges, the Aleph. So this is a beautiful phrase for introducing us to the story. And we know that everything it's about books. So let's just continue with the first chapter. And what can we notice here, guys? First of all, we can notice that there are a lot of descriptions, but English is not so difficult. So let's just start. So the story begins with this, this image. The man in the green had always got at Bercy, always be at the doors at the front of the compartment, and excited to be at the same doors at La Motte Piquet Grenelle, exactly 17 minutes later. That was on days when the stops, warning signals, and clanging were regular, the days that weren't exceptionally overcrowded, when there were no accidents, terror alerts, or strikes, and no unscheduled stops to regulate the trains. Ordinary days, the days when you feel as though you are a cog in a well-oiled machine, a huge mechanical body in which each person has their place and their part to play, willingly or not. So here we have that, we know that the main character is Juliette. She is in public transportation and she pays attention to the regulars. She already knows their routines. For example, in this part, it says this guy in the green hat, he's always getting off here, his trip is 17 minutes long. So she knows. And she started describing all her surroundings, all people there. She's paying attention, to some details. And something that catches her attention, let's just continue here. It says, the man in the green hat could perhaps have given her the answer if Juliette had dared ask him. Every morning he would open his briefcase and take out a book, covering thin, almost transparent paper, also a greenish hue. He would, unfold these corners with slow, deliberate movements. Sorry, my bad. Movements, then slide the finger between two pages and already separated by a strip of the same paper and begin reading. The title of the book was A History of Insects Useful to Man, Animals, and the Arts, with a supplement on how to destroy pests. That's a very interesting title for a book. But she is describing the characters in the public transportation. And then something that caught her attention was this guy always, all the time, he opens his bag. He takes out a book. And this time, the title of the book was that one, A History of Insects Useful to Men, Animals, and the Arts, with a supplement on how to destroy pests. So that, this lady, Juliette, start imagining What kind of person is this? Like, oh, animals. Maybe he will travel. Maybe, she started thinking a lot of things. And then suddenly, we have these three little stars, and they divide the scene. So this is the star. This is the beginning. She is describing the book, people on the public transportation, and then we jump into another scene. And this scene begins with bees, silkworm, mealbugs, crayfish, good lice, blister beetles, sorry, leeches, etc. So all these are insects. And for example, silkworms, it will be, like gusanos de seda. Bees, what a bee is, what a bee is. Sorry. Then you have, for example, good lice. Good lice, well, lice, it is piojos. So in this case, piojos de madera. And blister beetles, escarabajos. So this is a specific kind of a beetle. And then it says, Juliette, who was humming, jump. Oh, nothing, a sort of counting rhyme. Sorry, because in this part, like, remember that we jump from a scene, from another scene. So this time, Juliet is like, oh, insects, spiders, snakes, yes, good lice, oh, yes, bees. So she's thinking about insects, and then she's interrupted, like, hey. And then it's like, oh, yeah, yeah, what happened, And she's like, okay, are you good? And she's like, okay, I was just, like trying to remember some names. So they continue talking about, like their job, but it seems that it's not a very interesting job. I mean, for Juliet at least. She's a little bit bored because she's like, oh, well, like in this environment, we need to work. And then Chloe, Chloe, it is the person who is right now with Juliet in their office. Chloe is like, oh, yes, we need to do something with these papers. And she is, with a yellow binder, a folder. And Juliet is like, ugh. No, she's having, like nauseous. And she's like, hey, are you pregnant? Are you okay? And Juliet is like, yes, but that color, how do you want to work with that color? And says like, come on, grow up, you know? So the scene finished just, like with Chloe saying like, oh, okay, grew up. I mean, I know it's disgusting, but we need, what do you want me to do? That's it. And then, here Juliet asks, like, hey, are you reading something? What are you reading on the metro? What do you read on the metro? Sorry. So that is the ending of this scene. Remember that the scene begins in the public transportation, it ends in the office, and then we start with chapter number 2. So in chapter number 2, again, it says, there was the old lady, the mad student, the amateur ornithologist, the gardener, and the woman in love. At least Juliet assumed she was in love from her slight breathlessness and the tiny tears that formed on her eyelashes when she was 3/4 of the way whichever romantic novel she was devouring. So this is very interesting because, she is describing again people in the public transportation. And then here she says like, oh, I think she's in love because, she was crying and she was reading, but she was reading a romantic novel. And it says that here, she's describing the romantic novel. So pay attention in the description. It says they were fat books, dog-eared from being read over and over again. Sometimes on the cover there was an illustration of a couple locking an embrace on a blood-red background or lace suggestive of a bra. The torso of a naked man, the smell of a bag, and crumbled bedsheet of a pair of cuff links. Sober punctuation of the title underlined by a horizontal leather sheeted writing crop. And the tears that well up in the young woman's eyes, always around page 2047. Juliet had checked by glancing covertly at her neighbor. So let me just, like here. And all this part, she is describing the cover. that it is always two people. They are, like embrace, they are hugging, but also like the torso of the woman is not naked, but barely covered. The torso of the man is always naked, and there are some coughs. Some it says here, like the color red. It says blood red. So rojo sangre, rojo pasión, and well, in this case, she's just like, oh, the lady's crying, but I know she's reading this romantic novel and she's around that page. So always, always when they arrive to that part, always is the same. So here it just, like Juliet had checked by glancing covertly at her neighbor, then rose slowly down toward her jawline while her eyelids closed, and an involuntary sigh made her plump breasts swell in their overly modest little top. That's it. She did that. And it says, why pay 2047? Wondered Juliet as she started after an unfurled umbrella making its way to the platform at Duplex, protecting from the downpour an entire family whose legs alone were visible. So in this part, she's just like, oh, why in that part? And just, she sighs. So she do this movement, and that's why it's describing here. And then this duplex, well, it is just a place. Okay? Then we just, pensive, she drummed her fingers on the cover of her own book, which she no longer opened very often, so absorbed was she in watching other people. The coffee-stained paperback with a broken spine was transferred from bag to bag, from Tuesday's big shoulder bag, the day when Juliet did her food shopping after work, the little handbag she used on Fridays when she went to the cinema. A postcard slipped between here and here hadn't shifted for over a week. The landscape it depicted a mountain village in the distance above a patchwork of fields in various hues of brown. She now associated with the old lady, the one who always flicked through the same collection of recipes and occasionally smiled as if the description of a dish remind her of a moment of joyful madness. So she is, so paying attention. She is so into this, like gazing at people, imagining their stories, that she has forgotten about her own book. And something really interesting about it is that even if she doesn't read the book, she is carrying it all the time everywhere. If she change bags, she, is grabbing the book too. And do you do that, guys? I used to do that when I'm reading a paperback. So, I feel a little bit identified here. Let's just continue. And, well, she is describing that not paying attention in her book. So let's just move. And the next it says here, oh, she continues thinking about, like the animals. And then she's thinking about food because she starts, lamenting the cerveau. And remember, this is a French book. So a lot of works are in French. And, well, like, for example, pomodori, fagiolini, zucchini, those are also Italian. So it is just a mixture of cuisines, it is a mixture of languages, but remember that if you see something strange, don't panic. Probably it is French. Okay? So, like she is imagining here butterfly wings that flutter around the pack compartment before settling on Juliet's fingertips. She found the image cheesy. Do you know what is cheesy? It is cursi. But it was the only one that came to mind. Why butterflies anyway? Why not fireflies, winking for a few seconds before dying? But when has she seen fireflies? Never. As a matter of fact, there weren't any fireflies left, she feared. Only memories of her grandmother, the one who knit her scarf and who looked a bit like the old lady with the recipe book. Same pale, serene face, same strong-looking hands with stubby fingers adorned with just one ring, the thick wedding band, which over the years had dug into her flesh and made a permanent mark. Her wrinkled, blotchy skin covered the ring. Her body swelled up the symbol became deformed by it. So remember, She is in the same metro. She is paying attention to people, and at the beginning, remember that she mentioned that there are some passengers. So first of all, she pays attention in the woman who is crying because she's reading a romantic story, and then she pays attention to an old lady, and the old lady is the one that has the cooking book. So that cooking book reminds her to her grandmother, and we know that the scarf that she's using, the chunky scarf she's using, was a gift of her grandmother. So in this part, she is like comparing both women, sorry, with the fingers, like they like cooking, they were always probably in the kitchen. So like that is the image she is describing. So let's just continue. And well, in this part, everything it's about food. So this lady changes very quickly the scenario. So you have, to be aware. It says Fairfly. She used to say, "Fairflies are fallen star. It was still so young that I wasn't allowed to stay up, and the summer evenings were so long. For at least 2 hours, the slits in the shutters let the light in. It crept softly across the rug and climbed up the bars of my bed, and then suddenly the brass bed knob began to shine. I knew that I was missing the best bit, that moment when the sun sinks into the sea, when it becomes like wine or like blood. So I knot my night dress like this around my waist, nice and tight, and I climbed down holding on the trellis. A right little monkey, and I'd run to the end of the fields, to a spot from which you could see the sea. Then, when it was properly dark, I perched on the gate that was always left open. Behind the silkworm farm, that's where I saw them. They arrived out of nowhere. Only they came out of the ground. I never found out. Silent, suspended in my midair, settling of blades of grass, I didn't move a muscle. I didn't even dare breathe. It was surrounded by stars. So she is, like in the night cloud. She's like imagining a lot, and she is, like, oof, not in a trip, but she is imagining a lot of stuff. So remember, she is describing the romantic story, the romantic book, then the grandmother, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, like those summers when the day were long, and then this everything because she mentioned fireflies. That why, you when you are in love, you feel butterflies. Why not fireflies? And she says like, oh, because I have never seen. Well, I don't remember when was the last time I saw fireflies, and that thought reminds her or took her to her childhood. Like when she is thinking about summers. And then suddenly she is imagining she is outdoors, like looking at the sky, and all this starry sky is over there. So it says, the metro slowed down. Sèvres, Le Couvre, that would be the name of the station, Sèvres, Le Couvre. 3 more stops, or 4 depending on the day and on Juliette's mood. Squeal of metal signal. Out of the sudden, she leapt up and ran out, just as the door were about to close and her jacket got caught as they slammed shut. She yanked it out and was left standing rooted to the platform, slightly breathless as the train pulled away. In the morning grayness, a new shapes muffled in heavy coats were heading for the exit. So, sorry guys. So here, remember, suddenly she is imagining all these stars, and then the metro stops. And she is like 3 or 4 stations far from she is going. But suddenly, according to her mood, because suddenly she jumped out of the wagon. So when she did it, the doors closed. So her coat was trapped, and she was pulling it out. So when she did it, like the train left, and that's it. She just stood there. And remember that that is not her station. But well, anyway, she is going to the exit. So it says, on a February morning, who woke for the pleasure of roaming the streets aimlessly, looking up, observing the sharps of the clouds, or out of sheer curiosity? No one. People went from the cozy warmth of their apartments to their overheated offices, drank coffee, yawning as they commented on the day's task, the gossip, the news, always depressing. So she is just, like she went outside. And she's thinking like, oh, why people don't do that, just because they want to walk, they want to breathe, they want just, like to see outside, to see at the sky. And she's asking herself those questions, and she said like, well, everybody is, like immersed in other kind of stuff, but what is around us. And she is having those kind of thoughts, and then it says something that, Juliet wanted to see something different. So she knows, remember, we know that she is like 3 or 4 stations far from where she's going to, like to her office. But she says like, I want something new. I'm always walking, like the same path. So instead of turning right, she just, like go straight and then turn left. She did something different. And it says here, it says, if she took the first street on her right, then turned right again at the second intersection, it wouldn't take more than 10 minutes to get to work. A little walk would warm her up. So she decided to take another, another option, another path. And she is just, like walking, seeing like, oh, this is nice, this is that. And then suddenly what happened? It says here, let's just, continue here. She clearly remembered her first viewing, a 30-something couple in a hurry. She would suggested a coffee before they went into the apartment's building. I need to get to know you better, clarify your expectations. She will state with a confidence that that she was a long way from feeling at that moment. Clarify for expectations, she thought that sounded good. She will read in the booklet given to each member of staff by the management. But the man had stared at her, one eyebrow raised. Then tapped his watch meaningfully. The woman was checking her messages on her smartphone. She hadn't looked up, not even as they went up the stairs, while Juliette, frozen, had relit off the features she had memorized the previous evening. So, all this part, let me just, Ashlara, the charm of the Haussmann style architecture, you will notice the floor tiles in the lobby restore the match original sections, total peace and quiet. There's an elevator to the 4th floor, and look at the thickness of the stair carpeting. So here we know so far, remember, she's walking on the street and then she is distracted by something, and she is remembering a moment during her job. Why? Because she is a real estate representative. So she is, like selling and renting apartments. And she is, like describing this scene where she is showing a house, she's showing an apartment. She is like very nervous. But then, she noticed that the guy is not even interested. Like she's watching his watch, and then the lady is not even look at the apartment. She's all the time on her phone. So she feels a little bit disappointed. And as soon as she say goodbye to the clients, she knows that, they won't never call her again, that they are not interested. So again, like remember, we have 3 little stars, and there is an assigned that we are jumping to another scene. So this scene, it says, a seagull's cry brought Juliette back down to earth. She was dreaming, and then she heard the seagull's cry. So a bird that was like, wow, wow, or something. I don't know how a seagull does cry. So she stopped and looked up. Wings outstretched, the bird was circling above her. One more time. Wings outstretched, the bird was circling above her head. A low cloud passed beneath, and its beak and body disappeared. All that remained were the tips of its wings and its cry, which bounced off the high walls. So, like she saw a bird, and the bird was circling Juliet's head, and then she was, like moving. That's it. Beak, remember that the beak, it will be the beak of the bird. And then we have a very nice encounter because, Saif Said. And this lady, this Juliette, found a little girl. Her name is Said. So they have, like this conversation. Oh, well, let me just one more time. It says, Mm-mm-mm. A gust of wind whipped Juliet's face, sending her reeling back. It had a sobering effect, and she looked about her. The street was dismal, empty, lined with apartment buildings streaked with long trails of damp, the plaster flaking off. What the hell was she doing here? She shuddered, buried her face in her big scarf, and set off again. Said, so, like this is, she is asking herself, like, what am I here because of the bird is, think that happened? And then she says that, like the air is just messing with her hair. And she realized something. So, because of the air, because she's asking herself, what is she doing here? And the name, Said, it says, the boy seemed to be coming from very high up, but the little girl who was running toward her ignored it. Agile and spirited, she dug between Juliet's leg and an overturned recycling bin spewing plastic waste, gathered her skin limbs, and started hopping about on the slippery pavement again. Juliet turned to watch her skip off, swirling little pea green sweater to dancing braids, and her face fell on a high, rusted metal door, wedged open with a book. A book! In tall blue letters on an and name metal doorplate straight out of the World War II film were the words Book Unlimited. So she is thinking like, oh, why am I here? Why am I this? And she heard this boy Said. So she is like looking at this, and then she saw a girl who was running towards her. So the little girl bumped into her, and like in the moment, both of them they just like are on the floor. And Juliet realized something. Juliet realized that there is a door plate. There is a name on the door that says Unlimited Books. Well, Books Unlimited. And, well, later on, because that is the ending of finish number 2, number 3, we have this, the continue of the scene. So Juliet is asking the little girl, like, hey, are you okay? And then she saw that the fence was crooked. And what it was helping the fence not to be so crooked was a book. So she grabbed the book, and she was, like, oh, this is a book. And the little girl's like, hey, yes, but like it's helping me in order to open the fence. So give it to me. So Juliet gives the book to the girl. She, like put it in place. And then the little girl is like, hey, do you want to come in? But, like, tell me, are you suspicious? No, I'm not suspicious. I'm just here because of this. Like, oh, okay. And they start asking questions, but at the end of the day, Said let her in. And she's also telling her something like, are you here for the job? And she's like, what job? And that's it. So let me just, like I told you, so let me just, like read a little bit of the chapter with you. So it says, the boy shouted again, a galloping sound. Juliet felt a warm little body bank into her. Excuse me? The voice, surprisingly deep for a child, sounded shocked. Juliet looked down and met a pair of brown eyes so dark that the dilated pupils seemed to fill the irises. This is my house, said the little girl. May I come in? Of course. Awkwardly, Juliet stepped sideways, and the heavy door began to close. The little girl pushed it with both hands. That's why Papa always leaves a book there, she explained passionately. The handle's too stiff for me. But why a book? The question burst out like a criticism. Juliet felt herself blush, which hadn't happened to her for a long time, especially not in front of 10-year-old Pip Squeak. Said, what a pretty name, shrug. Oh, them, they say they are cuckoos. That's funny, isn't it? Like the birds. They've gotten the same pages repeated 3 or 4 times. They haven't been made right, you see. You can read them. Well, not really. Show me that. Show me that one. The girl leaned forward, closed her eye, and sniffed. I tried to read it. It's a stupid story about a girl who meets a boy. She hates him, and then she loves him, but then he hates her. but then he hates her, and I was bored. So I put mint leaves in it so that at least it will smell nice. So in this part, I told you about the book. So with the book, it says like, oh, but why a book? Are you using a book? And the girl is like, well, this book was ground printed. Some pages are repeated, and the story is bad. So that's why it's here. And as an extra, like the little girl put some mints inside the book. And remember that this book helps, like to steady the fence. And well, it says, continue with the story. Oh, that's a beautiful idea. And then it says, do you want to come in? Are you one of the passeurs? I never seen you before. Passeurs? Juliette shook her head. So, this is a French word, the passeurs. It would be, los paseantes, los que pasan. And it says like, oh, are you here for the job? And Juliette says, what job? So, well, like she is coming in, and then when she is coming in, she realizes that everything is full of books. There are books everywhere, piles and piles of books. And she is like, okay, this is nice. And well, in this part, Said is also explaining that her father runs the bookstore. And well, it's like, okay, I will introduce you to him, so you just need to walk that way. And well, meanwhile, as I told you, everything is surrounded by books. So when Juliet, like it is meeting this guy, she is like hitting a little bit with her body, so a pile of books just, like felt. But well, so let me see how this chapter ends. It says, while she raced up the step of a metal staircase that led to a long gallery running the length of the first floor of the building, probably a former factory, Juliet Juliet made her way hesitantly towards the glass door. She didn't know exactly why she followed the little girl and was now obeying her order. Thinking about it, was it an order or a piece of advice? In any case, this was utter madness. She was already late. She knew it. She knew it without needing to look at her watch. A fine drizzle was now falling and gently stinging her face, prompting her to seek warmth and temporary shelter. After all, she had nothing urgent to do that morning. She could always say her washing machine was on the blink. It had been acting up for months. She had even talked at length to Monsieur Bernard about it, and he insisted on explaining on her the merits of the different brands. So, in this part, sorry, I think I spoiled you a little bit. But she's just, like walking to meet this guy, this, like the father of Said. And in her way to meet him, she is looking at the books and everything, but she is also asking herself, wondering, like, why am I here? Like, I'm already late. Like, I just had 10 minutes. Now, I'm like 20 behind or something. And then she said, like, well, but I have nothing. I have no pendings. So I will tell the same lie as I have been telling, that my washing machine is not working. So that's it. That is how, like it finished the chapter. It says the glazed door sparkled, reflecting a section of sky, and in the depths of the room a light was on. Juliet raised her hand and knocked. So finally she arrived to this door when she is meeting, like Said fathers. And I'm sorry, I think I spoiled you a little bit too. Because, like when Said and Juliet, they are walking, she is not looking at the books because there's no books, is when she's asking herself. So I spoiled you a little bit, guys. But well, like she is knocking the door, and as soon as she opens, well, she sees books. And that is the ending of chapter number 2. So in chapter number 3. In chapter number 4, we have what I told you about the book, so let's just begin with that. It says, it's open. A man's voice, slightly muffled, husky, even thin, with an indefinable accent. At the far of the room, a long shape unfurled as she pushed open the door. Juliet saw a mountain of boxes, the top ones placed slightly askew, which began to wobble. Watch out, she yelled. Too late. The boxes crashed to the floor, sending up a cloud of dust. Juliet began to choke, and covered her mouth and nose with her hand. She heard a chorus, which she didn't understand, and glimpsed movement. The man had fallen to his knees. She saw he was dark haired, dressed in black, quite thin, and was rubbing his eyes. I don't believe it. I sorted them all out. Will you help me? His tone this time was imperious. At a loss of words, Juliet nodded and moved towards the light, where the voice had come from. The man was alone. He waved his arm around his two short sleeves, revealing bony wrists, like the wrists, muñecas. And now that the dust had settled a little, she could see his profile. Clean, almost sharp, his nose straight as that of Greek god, of the warriors of the Knossos frescoes. She'd spent 2 weeks on the Crete the previous summer, and she had often seen them since in her dreams, brandishing javelins and running headlock into the assault, their long, almond shaped eyes filled with the visions of glory and immortality. So that was a very long description. But well, in this part, as I told you, she is knocking the door. The guy says like, oh, come in. She opens the door, and suddenly, she saw all these piles of boxes and books, and one of those piles is just wobbling, tambaleándose, and it fell down. So now the guy is like, oh no, I just, like put it in order. Can you help me, And Juliet is like, okay. And meanwhile, because of the books falling down, the boxes falling down, there's a cloud of dust. So Juliet is like, oh, dust. And the guy is coughing. So when the dust settles down, the Juliet sees the guy, and she's describing it and says like, oh, his nose. Oh yes, like those people in Greece. And she said that she spent 2 weeks in her vacations on Greece, and that's why she knew about like how their noses are. So here we have, like he gathered up the scattered books, failing around like a clumsy swimmer, torpe swimmer, like that swims. And it says, the book were tied high, lying highly piglit, the covers sliding over another, fanning out, some books fallen opera. All of a sudden, she thought she heard the hum of a kikati flying out of a bush. So, everything is a mess. Everything is a mess, but there are all kind of books. And she is, like amazed because of that. When she was directly in front of him, he looked up and voiced his dismay with childlike simplicity. I can't remember how I sorted this. By subject or by country, perhaps, or by genre, he added, as if in apology. I'm very absent-minded. My daughter's always scolding me. She always a bird flew off with my brain a long time ago. So here the guy is like, okay, we have the books, but I don't remember the order. Was it alphabetically? Was it because of genres? Was it because of that? So, like she is like, oh, I'm sorry. Like I forget things. My daughter is always telling me like, hey, yeah, your memory is bad. And well, it says like, oh, little Said, is she your daughter? And we continue here like, oh, before Juliet was spread an almost complete set of Sola's novels, because of the books. Sola's novels, she's talking about the books. It says like, yes, have you met her? Yes, she's the one who invited me in. I should tell her to be more careful. Do I look dangerous? And it's like, oh no, you don't look dangerous. Above the pile of Solas, a man faced with a pencil mustache was arrogantly staring at her. She deciphered the title, Bellamy, Maupassant, she said, and here's Daudet, naturalist novels. Maybe you try to classify them by literary genre. He wasn't listening. So remember, this guy is my absent. This guy is my absent, so he distracts very easily. And then while Juliet is just like looking at the books and it's like, oh, this book is about nature, oh, that book is that. So maybe she is like, I think it's by area, I think it's by genre. but the guy is not listening to it. And then we continue the conversation, and he's like, "Oh, you don't look dangerous. What are you? What is your job? What do you do for a living?" And it says, like they continue talking about books. Well, not books, but like she is looking at the covers. She is, like, oh, this, all that. So we have a lot of titles here. It's, like even, some Agatha Christie, that is mystery books. Then it says, the voice of the man in black brought her abruptly back to the present. Here, take these here. Now I remember I didn't know where to put them. I suppose that means they are ready to leave. So remember that, while the description with the pile that, fell down, the guy is grabbing some books in his way. And also, while they are having the conversation, remember that the guy is mindset. So he's always, like grabbing some books. And then, the guy says, like, well, like, here you have some books, take them with you. They don't have, like, place here anymore. Maybe it is time to say goodbye to them. And Juliet is like, okay, ready to leave? Like, why you say so? And then this is the very interesting description of the pastor, like the job. And it says, yes, that is why you are here, isn't it? You want to be a pastor. Ordinarily, I should have asked you some questions first. I made a list over there. He pointed vaguely at the desk, strewn with papers and articles cut out of newspaper. But I can never find it when I need it. I can offer you a cup of coffee, though. No, thank you. I have to go. So, but still, I need to explain you how we operate. We, I mean they, because well, it's a bit complicated. I don't go out. He got up, deftly using his hand for support, stepped over the boxers, and made his way to the back of the room, where a little table stood of sort of metal contraption, as well as cups, and a tin with the old-fashioned inscription, Biscuit Lefebvre Utile. Well, this guy is like, but don't you want to know about the job? Usually we ask for some requirements, but I don't know where I, like wrote them, so my bad. But do you want coffee? And Juliet is like, no, thank you. I have to go. So, well, the guy is going to the back part, to grab something, and he grabs, like a rope or something like it's not a belt, but like a long string, in order to just like maintain the books together like old school. And then Juliet says that it reminds her to like the old backpacks, when you have all your books like together, and then you just have them to carry on your back. So she is always like, oh, I knew it, like he is eco-friendly, and, well, no plastic bags. So let's just continue, and it says here, a charming woman. Oh, yes, yeah. Let me just, let's just continue, because I think I already probably spoiled you. But, well, anyways, in this part, she's like, oh, I need to go, but they are talking about the job, and it says, it's a percolator of my own invention, he said with his back to Juliet. It works on the principle of the pellet stuff. Do you see what I mean? Not really, mumbled Juliet, who felt most definitely she was being drawn into the realm of the absurd. She was late, very late now. Chloe must already have called her phone, switched off to find out whether she was ill. Monsieur Bernard would have walked into glass wall office on the left as you enter the agency, removed his coat and hung it on the cupboard, checking that the shoulders were perfectly level on the hanger with its cedarwood disc to keep the moths away. He would have switched on his personal coffee maker, placed 2 sugar lumps in his Limoges porcelain crop rim with 2 thin bands of gold, the sole vestige of his modern coffee service, he once told her. A charming woman, but the scattered brain, she'd broken all the others, even, well, all this part, yeah. Well, maybe it is not. He home as he forgot that she was there. She felt rather than heard the tongue swirl around her flailing before fading away. My name is Soliman, he said, turning a base. Okay, no, it is not that part. It is the next one. So in this part, remember that she is like, "Oh yes, I am going," like I need to go. And this guy is, "Yeah, but like grab these books." And then, like she is like, "Oh yes, like I should go because right now Chloe, my coworker, she probably already called me on my phone, and then my boss, who always, like his office is the left one, and he's always like putting his coat in the right place in order not to have some wrinkles, and then he's always like drinking coffee in some cups that has two gold lines, and it's a very old one because it's part of the coffee. It says the coffee what? Well, it is part of like the wear of her mother. So it says here, yeah, his mother coffee service. So it is part of something else. And then it says here that the guy introduced himself. It says, "My name's Soliman," he said, turning to face her. "What's yours?" So that is the ending of chapter number 4, and this is the last one. But here we have something a little bit, like sad. So, "My father used to love Mozart," he said after a while, when they were drinking so slowly a thick black, almost syrupy coffee. "My name, my sister, and me after in the opera. My he named my sister and me after characters in the opera Said. My daughter is also called Said." So he named my sister and me after. Name after. So that would be that you name someone because of that. So name after. And it says, "What's about your mother? Was she okay with that?" And then this guy, it says like, "Well, my mom, like she's not here. My mom died very young, but like she hadn't really been with us, absent in a way. So they don't bother because of the question." It's like, okay. So in this part, it says that, have you heard of the principle of releasing books into the wild? He went on a few moments silence. "An American, Ron Hornbaker, created or rather developed the concept of book crossing in 2001. Turn the whole world into a library. A lovely idea, don't you think? You leave a book in public place, a station, park, bench, cinema, someone picks it up, reads it, then releases it elsewhere a few days or weeks later." He pressed his hands together under his chin, forming an almost perfect triangle. "But what needed was a way of tracking the books that had been released, following their journey, and allowing readers to share their impressions. Hence, the Books Crossing website, where each book is registered, it is given an ID, which must be included on a label on the cover with the website URL. Anyone picking up a book can register the day and place where they found it and an opinion or a review." So here, remember that they are introducing themselves, and the guy is about to tell her about what is a passeur. So he is telling us here, "Hey, have you heard about that program created by this guy where you just leave a book in public place, someone just grab it and read it, and then you just continue doing the same? Well, like this guy created a platform where you just register the book and you can just leave a comment or read a synopsis and whatever." So it says like, "Oh, okay, well, okay, is what you do?" And the guy says like, "Not exactly, because here is backward. Here, instead of you releasing the book, you are choosing at the person. You feel, you are very connected to the person, and you say like, oh, that person needs to read this book, that person needs to read that book." So we are two, oh sorry, we are just like one person in the job right now doing the same, because our last password is not among us anymore. And Juliet says, "What? She's not among us anymore? What do you mean?" And the guy says like, "Yes, she committed suicide." And let's just read that part a little bit. It says, She was effacing woman, quiet, secretive even. I never found out exactly where she came from. She just appeared one day, like you. Nor do I why she decided to end her life. Juliet felt a lump in her throat, a knot, a lump. The walls of the book seemed to be closing in on her, compact and menacing. You mean she... Yes, she committed suicide 2 days ago. He nodded the photo across the table toward Juliette. It was a black and white shot, slightly grainy, the details blurred by the distance and the poor quality of the print. But she immediately recognized a woman with the thickest body bundled up in a winter coat in three-quarter view. It was the woman with the cookery book who wrote line 6 on the metro, the one who often looked out with a mysterious expectant smile. I'm sorry, how stupid of me. After the 4 or 5 times that Solomon repeated these words, he brought Juliet a box of tissues, another cup of coffee, and a plate, not very clean, onto which he tipped the content of the tin of biscuits. So remember that, like he is describing the job, like, oh, you choose the person and then you leave the book, and he is saying like, oh, but we were two people and now we are just one because our last password, is not among us. She, like, I don't know why, I don't knew her very well. She was always quiet, but either way, I don't know why she decided to end her life. And Juliet is like, do you mean that? Like, yeah, she committed suicide. And the guy has, like a picture, so he is showing the picture to Juliet, and Juliet recognized immediately that, like the image, the lady in the image was the same lady that we were describing some chapters ago, that she has, like the cook book, and she reminds her to her grandma because of the fingers, because of this. So she started crying, and the guy, the only thing he could say is like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So Juliet is like, you don't have, like to say the same thing over and over. But they start like, did you know her? And like, yes, but no, like, well, I knew she wasn't in the transportation. I knew her because we were using the same metro at the same time. But that's it. I never thought that that could be happening. And she is asking, like, oh, like sometimes we have some signs, we should help people. And the guy is like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So Juliet is like, hey, stop saying that, like, no more sorry. So here it says that, well, like she was crying, and then she's like, well, I really need to go. So as I told you, like this guy, it says here, like, it wasn't a question. He held out the parcel of books, which he had fastened with a canvas strap, like in the past, she thought, when children carry school books. Rigid, heavy bundles that dug into their bags as they walked. She wasn't surprised. She couldn't imagine him using a plastic bag. So at the end, or maybe I spoiled you, like since some chapters ago, but in this time, he's handling her the books. The books are already, like all together with this canvas strap, with this rope, like in the past, And, well, it says like, oh, yes, I will come back. Wetting the books under her arm, she turned her back to him and made her way over the door. Her hand on the knob, she stopped. Did you ever read love stories? And she asked without turning around. This will surprise you, he answered. Yes, sometimes. What happens on page 247? There was a pause. He appeared to be thinking about her question or perhaps dragging up a memory. Then he said, on page 247, all seems lost. Is the moment, And that's the end of the chapter number 5, guys. So, like here in this part with this little, sentence, I just know that they are building this very, very nice link because they know about books. And also that job, the pastor job, I think it is a beautiful kind of, helping people, because it is right. When you are in any dark moment, if you have the right book, it's like if you have a friend giving you information, giving you advice. So I think that is so beautiful. And well, guys, that will be the ending of chapter number 5. As you may see, next time it will be chapter number 6. So for the moment, let's just stop here. I really hope that you continue having an excellent reading, that you are enjoying this very, very story full of books, full of imagination, and also, like Paris, French words. And well, I am just eager to see you in our session on Thursday. So see you there. Bye, guys.